What is up, guys? Welcome to the channel. My name's Micah, and today we've got to talk about the brand new Suzuki DR-Z4S and 4SM that were just released. So these are going to be the brand new updated models of the DR-Z400S and 400SM that we have waited for 24 years. Now they're still going to use a 400 size motor, but pretty much everything else is changed, updated, and brand new. Suzuki just released these models a couple hours ago, so we have a ton to talk about. I'm going to go through everything that's new, everything that changed. I'll give you the details on that. So by the end of the video, we'll decide if this new DR-Z4 is better than the king, than the OG DR-Z400. So without further ado, let's rip into it. So the number one thing you're gonna notice right off the bat is that this bike is totally restyled. I mean, every light on it is LED. They changed the fenders, the bodywork. It actually looks like it belongs in 2025. You know, the DR-Z has always been so awesome and just been known for its capability and reliability. You know, this thing has just been such a rock solid player in the dual sport world, but it always looked like it was 20 years old, even when they were brand new. You know, we just saw this model carried over year to year without ever getting really any updates, which if it ain't broke, why fix it? But now we got all the updates all at once. So I am really digging the new look of this bike. I mean, it just looks so modern and so elegant with the way the front is with that single Cyclops projector. I mean, the thing looks like an off-road MX bike with some mirrors and lights. So Suzuki absolutely nailed the styling of this bike. It's hard to believe that we went from this to that, but you won't hear me complaining. Now, while the bike is still in the 400 class, it now has electronic fuel injection, ride-by-wire throttle. There is 3 different traction control modes, 3 different ride modes. There's ABS that you can turn on and off. The bike does have a slipper clutch now as well, and it has a really nice keypad on that left side handle grip, so you can easily go through your different ride modes, traction modes. The ABS switch is actually going to be right on the display, so that makes for a quick adjustment there. So a ton of electronic goodies all changed and added to this bike for 2025. Now, we did see Suzuki retain the passenger pegs like I was hoping they would, so you still have the option to take a second person if you need to. Now, Suzuki changed quite a few things about the motor on this bike. So I mean, the head, the cylinder, the intake, lots of different changes there, with them adding the electronic fuel injection and bringing this bike to those Euro 5 standards. We saw some major revisions here on the power plant. Now, with talking about the engine on this bike, it's important to go over how much power this new model puts out. Now, the new model being up to those Euro 5 standards and being compliant with emission standards these days, it's actually going to put out a little bit less power than the outgoing older carbureted model, but not much, and it's not all bad because there's going to be ways to get that power back up. So the new DR-Z4 is claiming 37.5 horsepower and 27.3 foot-pounds of torque. Now, that's going to be about 2 horsepower less than the outgoing model here, which honestly is more power than I thought we were going to get from it. Now, with the new model going to fuel injection, you know, it's definitely going to be an option to get your bike flashed or tuned, you know, get an exhaust, put a high flow air filter or different intake on it, and you're going to be able to bump those horsepower numbers back up. Now, with a full exhaust, a tune, a different intake or air filter, what will we be able to get those power numbers to? It's hard to say exactly, but I think you can absolutely count on being over that 40 horsepower mark. You know, could be mid 40s, we're just not quite sure yet. Now, the frame of the new DR-Z4 did get some tweaks and updates as well, but it did not contribute to making an overall lighter package. The new model is actually going to be a bit heavier. The S model, the dual sport enduro version, is going to weigh in at 332 pounds. The Supermoto SM model weighs in at 339.5. So Yeah, the new bike got about 20 pounds heavier. So I was not exactly excited to see that, but there is going to be a few things you could do to lower that weight, you know, swapping out your exhaust for a different aftermarket muffler, you know, the tail tidy, different mirrors. You know, there's little things that you could shed a few pounds by doing, but in no scenario are you going to get the new DR-Z4 to weigh in less than the outgoing DR-Z400. So it is what it is. You know, it will be interesting to ride the new model because while it does weigh more, it's very possible that it could just wear its weight lower and just kind of feel and ride and seemingly be lighter than the old model. So I'll be very excited to ride one, but on paper it is heavier. Now, one downfall on the new model that was always kind of a perk to the older DRZs here is that with such a crazy facelift, with so many different things being changed on the new model, we're pretty much starting from scratch as far as aftermarket parts and accessories go. You know, with these older DRZs, parts were so plentiful and therefore so cheap. I mean, whether it was exhausts or tail tidies, handlebars, skid plates, everything was so cheap because it fit model 2000 to 2024. So with Suzuki not updating this model for so long, it was such a perk. It made ownership and maintenance so easy for this bike. You know, I fully expect the new DR-Z4 to be just as reliable and an excellent quality bike, but we are starting from square one again as far as like the aftermarket parts and things go. So that is the one downfall of getting a totally revamped, updated model. Now, the two things that Suzuki has not mentioned that we don't have any info on yet is going to be the price of the new DR-Z4S and 4SM and then the transmission. You know, it was always kind of a complaint by people that this bike had a 5-speed transmission as opposed to a 6. Now, with Suzuki kind of staying silent on that transmission thus far, and with it not being in their promo video, I'm gonna assume, and I think it's safe to do so, that the bike is still gonna retain the 5-speed transmission. Now, I think it's likely that Suzuki might have updated that gear ratio for that 5-speed, which, and I don't exactly know which direction they would go. You know, would they gear it lower, or will they just make first gear lower and 5th gear taller? Like, I don't really want 5th gear to be taller if the overall bike is going to be heavier than the outgoing model. You know, it might feel kind of sluggish in top gear. But do you want first gear or even the first few gears to be a little bit shorter than they were? I think everybody's going to have a different answer for that. You know, it depends on the riding that you do, if you're more on-road or off-road, and if you are off-road, are you doing slower technical things? So that will be interesting to see, you know, when we get the details on that transmission, you know, to find out what Suzuki did there. Now, as far as pricing will go for the new DR-Z4, it's hard to kind of guess where that is going to end up. You know, I initially thought if they did some updates, it would probably end up around the $8,500 mark, but they did a lot more updates. They changed a lot more about this bike than I thought they would. So I don't know. I mean, hoping that this bike will stay around the same price point that it's at, you know, that $7,100 mark. I mean, that's wishful thinking. That is certainly not gonna happen, seeing all that Suzuki changed and added. I think Suzuki has got to have it priced well below the Honda CRF 450RL. I mean, with the CRF putting down more power, being lighter, if the new DR-Z4 was around that $10,000 price point, nobody will get it. People will just opt for the CRF 450RL. I suppose my guess for now, until we have the price released, is that the new DR-Z4 is probably gonna be close to the $9,000 mark. Like, I don't want to say that, I'm not happy about that, but with everything the new model has on it, gosh, I think that's about where it's gonna end up. But we will see, that's just a guess. I hope it's much less. So now with all the changes and updates, you know, that Suzuki did for this DR-Z4, it is so modern, it has all the latest goodies that you want. Is it still gonna be a go-to for dual sport riders? I don't know. I just don't know. You know, some of the things about the older model, that it was so cheap, that it was so reliable, parts were everywhere. Some of those things disappear when going to a new model. You know, the new model puts down less power. It is heavier. Do the true dual sport riders want the traction control? Do you need ride modes on just a 400cc size bike? I mean, I personally don't. You know, I will probably never have the traction control on. It will always be on its highest power riding mode. Like, I just don't think a 400 is enough punch that you really need to have ride modes on it. Now, the traction control and ride modes, the ABS, you know, I think that is appealing to newer riders. You know, it gives them peace of mind knowing that they can have that stability, that they can tame the motor down just a little bit. But I think to all of the veteran, you know, off-road and dual sport riders, none of that really matters. You know, things like the ride-by-wire throttle, the electronic fuel injection, I think everybody can be in agreement that we all like those things. But regardless of all the changes, whether you like them or hate them, it is cool to see an update for this model finally. Wow, I mean, we waited so long. The looks are killer. The thing just looks so good for a dual sport. So, a bunch of new fun things, a ton of fun stuff to think about and look forward to. I cannot wait until we get our hands on one of those so we can really ride it, put it through the ringer, and find out how good that new DR-Z4S is. Or maybe we'll opt for the SM. I don't know, that's been on my mind. Should we get the Supermoto? We'll see. At the moment, I'm leaning towards the S because I do love to play in the dirt. But my goodness, I know I would be a hooligan on that SM. So hopefully that helped you guys out with some info and details. Hopefully you're as excited about this new model as I was. Man, waking up today and seeing that announcement from Suzuki. That was exciting. And the promo videos. I'll put Suzuki's promo videos for the 4S and the 4SM down in the description so you guys can click those, go check them out. They're pretty cool. Suzuki does make this bike look like the latest and greatest dual sport ever. So I guess now we'll just wait and see what Suzuki is gonna price this thing at, if they are gonna stay with the 5-speed transmission as opposed to going to the 6. You know, there's a few details, a few things that are still up in the air, but I think overall, a lot of people are really gonna be pleased with all the updates, everything that Suzuki has done with this bike. So, like the video if this helped you out, subscribe if you guys want to see more, and until next time, have a wonderful night, guys.